Well, the perks of real estate, it's first of all, it's harder to find, so that's a con. It's harder to get a deal. There's the closing process and all the other stuff that goes along with it. But I love the protection that real estate gives you against inflation, because you're essentially buying a property now at the current price and you're locking in a contract. So you bought that house for 100 grand. The low interest rate is 3%, right? So you're locking in 30 years of payments at the current price, at the current interest rate, right? And maybe people that have parents or, they've owned a home for a long time can relate to this. When you first buy that property and you see that mortgage of $1,000, it's still a lot. But after 5, 10 years, 15 years, that mortgage payment is really like nothing. It's a lot easier to pay it. So to me, that is a great protection against real estate, because you're locking it in and you're actually benefiting from the currency devaluation, because it makes it easier for you to pay that debt. On top of that, because of inflation over time, the rents go up, wages go up, the property appreciates. All along the while, your payment is fixed. So that to me is the huge win. And I know there's like depreciation tax benefits and other stuff, but that alone as a concept at a high level makes it a no-brainer to me to do it if you could.
Yeah, you're making all the same points that I would have just, when you're talking, say, if you're trying to get away from the centralized dollar, like you're talking with inflation, your options are limited. You could go in Bitcoin. The difference in real estate, and real estate is a hard asset. So you are kind of going again, you're still within that centralized, system, because you're paying US dollars for the real estate, but the real estate's its own asset. So even if our currency changes in 100 years, the real estate's going to be worth whatever the going currency is, right? So the difference with real estate is that's not so much the same with stocks, is you are expected to acquire debt to obtain the real estate. So you have two things working for you. You have the inflation, whereas as dollars are printed, the dollar and the value of the real estate itself is going up. That $100,000 house in 30 years might be worth $200,000. But you also borrowed that $75,000 to buy that house. And in 30 years, you're paying it back with much less valuable dollars than you borrowed it at. And that's what you were getting at before. I just basically said the same thing in a different way, I think. But
in a better way.
And going back to 5 years ago, I was like, debt is bad, debt is bad. Dave Ramsey, no bad debt is good debt. And there is tons of bad debt out there. But when you learn, car payment, usually bad for most people, not everyone, but usually credit card debt, usually bad. Even I'm not a fan of student loan debt, not good debt to have, in my opinion. People might disagree with me, but when you're talking about using debt as a tool to leverage an appreciating asset, it's very powerful, especially if you can borrow money for 30 years at under 3%. You should be borrowing as much money as you can. Don't go buy a boat. Invest it in something that goes up in value, and you cannot lose.